Part 3, The Story of the Scroll, The Path of Evolution. The Stockbuilders. The scroll begins with the word Wajihai. It is translated as, and it was. Such indeed is the beginning of many a story. However, knowing the meaning of the word as originating from another world, ancient tradition has it that such an introductory term spells the suffering of exile, the oppression of adopting form of apparently being handed over to arbitrary acts, to arbitrariness. The word Wajihai in itself is a lamentation, a cry of suffering which is to unroll itself in what lies ahead. It is also the cry of the infant at the moment its life in this world is starting to unroll itself. Now, what is the nature of this exile, introduced by the word Wajihai in the story of Esther? Ancient tradition gives an enumeration of characterizations of it, offering the wise man a glimpse of the actual ways in which exile manifests itself. Ancient tradition, amongst other things, connects the exile of this particular Wajihai, and it was, in the days of Ahasuerus, with the manifestation of exile in the Torah, Deuteronomy 28:66, a verse in which the exile of the end, the exile after the destruction of the temple, takes form in the words of the Bible. The Hastir Esther of the name of Esther also comes into prominence in that passage. Ancient tradition connects the whole story of exile in the Torah with the story of Esther. Now in Deuteronomy 28:66, the words occur, "Thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have none assurance of thy life." An ancient tradition holds that this implies that man will buy wheat for a year in advance, that he stocks flour from the merchant, and that he buys bread from the baker. They are the three phases of "Thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have none assurance of thy life." The layman, the reader without any knowledge of ancient tradition, may have imagined something quite different about exile. However, if one should reflect on the principle as here stated by ancient tradition, one will readily get an idea that exile actually is from the expression of man in this world. In ancient lore, wheat, shitta, is the manifestation of the beginning of evolution, development. It is primal life being subjected to development. In the world of plants for the first time, manifests what we observe as growth. The totality divides itself into phases, manifesting side by side and after each other. What we observe as growth is exile in form. What lies ahead is uncertain. What is growth going to bring? Will growth continue or will it stop? How long will it go on? The series of 7 kinds of growth, the 7 fruit, which the Bible is acquainted with, Deuteronomy 8:8, starts with the concept of wheat. That is why wheat is connected with the tree of knowledge. It is the starting point of the development. Together with wheat, the body starts growing. It is on different level whence wheat started. Wheat itself goes through various phases through its growth, from the moment of sowing, sprouting, growing, until it's being cut off from the ground. Then, after harvesting, the stacking till the time of threshing, next the grinding of flour, and finally the kneading and baking of bread. It is a long way, this way of development of wheat. At the end, there is bread. Growth is the manifestation of the exile. And exile reveals itself where one is uncertain about the future, and where one is tempted by this uncertainty to make arrangements for the future. Hence, where one is worried about this growth, where one thinks one should take things in one's own hands because otherwise anything may happen. People are not aware that life in this world is not connected with development, which will take place anyway, since development is called up by creation. By that life is concerned with the return, that man has come to earth for that purpose. Being concerned with development, knowing full well that there are so many complicated factors at work which determine this development, therefore is the outstanding mark for life in exile. One wants to do things by oneself, as they may not be done satisfactorily. Otherwise, it is not only that one wants to give God a hand in his work. What one would like best is to be the God of development oneself. This urge to give God a hand and the almost comical side of it is illustrated in a Hasidic story. A man came to a tzaddik with all sorts of plans and ideas. He thought this country should not act in this way, but in that way, that such and such a thing was no good in politics, that something should really be done about it. The Sadiq gave him a parable in answer. A man moved with his family from one place to another. Everything, his wife, the children, the furniture, etc., had been loaded on the wagon. The horse started pulling. On the way, it occurred to the paterfamilias that the horse was surely having a job of it, pulling that load. In order to lighten the weight for his horse, he drew the child sitting by his side on his knees. There now, he said. Now the poor brute will have it easier. The horse would only be relieved if part of the load would be taken off the wagon. But we are in this world and we can't get off, and that's a fact. The Sadiq wound up. Politics this way or that way. The horse had to pull it all, anyway. So the care about development in the first phase manifests itself as buying wheat for the next year. However, one merely buys wheat. All the rest one is willing to wait for, whether the wheat is ground to flour and whether the flour will be made into bread. One buys the wheat because thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, as it says in this first phase. Whoever has been marked to what thou shalt fear day and night will want to have the flour with him. Fear pursues him more closely. Development to him looks like the devil's game. If, however, one is not sure of one's life, as a matter of fact, it says in the text, if one does not believe in one's life, then one buys the baked bread. In that case, one does not leave anything to fate in full faith. In that case, one does not believe anything anymore. One wants to have everything arranged by oneself, quite close to oneself, so close to oneself as to be able to get warm and comfortable in the proximity of the final point of development, in the proximity of the bread, so that one can enjoy it. Well, one will then say, I possess the latest, the most modern, the newest. I know the last edition of the scientific books. I have the newest models of everything. I really have the baker's bread at home with me. Things could not be better. Curiously, about this normal, modern, efficient man, ancient tradition says literally, he is dead. And the Torah speaks about the living and not about the dead. For in working out this principle of the exile, tradition merely takes into account those that buy wheat for 3 years, for 1 year, and those that buy flour from the merchant. For those that buy bread from the baker do not count. They are no human individuals. They are not alive. They have no emunah, no faith in their life. They are reckoned among the dead. The Torah is not for those people. The Torah is merely for people who still are up and doing, who may be acting gratuitously. Those that do have faith in their life, however uncertain it may be, and however much they live in fear night and day. So the kind of life that was dealt with in the story of Esther is the life of this human individual, this man who is ever in danger, ever in fear, who is, however, still alive, who at least still needs the flour and bakes bread of it, with the chance that there may be no bread after all. Then he would have brought and needed that flour for nothing.